Hello everyone, I'm actually on time this time, although I did kind of cheat. I just set it up for whatever's more convenient for me. Um, you hear about deck techs. I won't hold anything up, but first one's swapping parts with Daretti here. If you don't know what he does, we'll talk about him. He's part of the new Aetherdrift set. His power is equal to the greatest value of artifact you control, and then whenever he enters or attacks, you get to swap an artifact from in play with something that's in your graveyard, which is why I call the deck swapping parts. He's a mechanic, so it kind of makes sense. Uh, we have a couple of sub themes in here to fit that. Discard. Red's one of the best at doing that. Although, if you have more for budget, this is built for around $100. I would put something in here like Clan Ironworks. That way you consistently have stuff in your graveyard to animate with the ready with that ETB trigger. But I'm just going to rely on card advantage pieces to fuel up my graveyard. Or it could have some cool stuff that sacks themselves to bring back for later. We got his original version of himself. It's 50 cents, but still really good for what we want to be doing. His +2 lets you discard 2 cards, draw up to that many, and then his -2 does the ETB and attack trigger that the new version does. I don't expect to get the -10, but it's a really sweet effect whenever an artifact goes to your graveyard. You just animate it back into play. Super cheap and powerful for what it does. Something I want to mention is because the big dumb artifacts are super popular, that means they're super expensive. So I gotta be a little creative with our card choices. A lot of our removal comes from our creature package and or our artifact package over here. So we're gonna be doing a lot of sorcery speed kind of stuff, or when we get the ETB/attack trigger. That's probably a shortcoming of the list, is you're not going to be interacting a lot on the stack. I thought getting the artifact count nice and high so we consistently loop stuff from our graveyard was more important. So I made a conscious decision to do that. It has 51 artifacts. So I'd be surprised if you get this 5-drop down and you don't have something to swap out. I feel like you have enough artifacts that both have something in play and in your graveyard to, not waste a single trigger of this. Removal piece is Meteor Golem, perfectly good. Mindless Automaton, it's a card advantage and a discard outlet, perfect. Shuttless Outlander, I like this guy because he has trample. He's a big dumb idiot, and then you could cycle him away so you could get a land, and then you have something to animate later. Sandstone Oracle is a card advantage piece. On ETB, you choose a player with the most cards, and then you draw the difference, so you have the same amount of cards as they do. Suchi, the Cave Guard, super fun. His death trigger gives you a bunch of mana equal to its CMC, so you get 8. And the other cool part about this trigger is the mana doesn't fall off in between steps and phases, so you will always have 8 floating mana until you use it. It's a very unique trigger. There's not a lot of delayed triggers in Magic or stuff that just ignores this and it's not like a permanent. If I dare say, I think this is one of a kind of a card where the mana just doesn't go away. It's not a permanent that you can interact with. It just happens. Very unique card. It's very similar to the original Sushi, which is a 4-drop and gives you 4 mana, but that, when it dies in the steps and phases end, you lose the mana, so they kind of like corrected it, but made it extra expensive for you. I just want to check my volume real quick. Yeah, we're still golden. Ancient Stone Idol is just a big dumb idiot with trample. Something for us to cheat and play that's threatening. And then it has the added bonus of dying, giving you a 6/12. Not something to complain about. And if you loop it enough, you could have a ton of 6/12 tokens in play. Like if this is the thing that you're sacking to Daretti's trigger and swapping with your graveyard and then animating back, you'll be constantly just putting a bunch of power into play that your opponents will have to deal with. Night Rampager. Another big dumb idiot that I guess on death shoots people. Can't be too bad. This is kind of what I mean by like I wanted something worthy of animating, but the big dumb stuff that are popular is incredibly expensive, so we had to fill it up with something that's somewhat useful. A 6/5 is big body. You add the extra damage on death for the looping trigger. It's not bad. Sculling Doom Engine can't be blocked by rinky dink stuff, and then when it dies, you shoot something. Kind of similar to Night Rampager, just a little bit better, a little bit bigger. Steel Hellgate kind of fulfills a board wipe slot. Lets us blow up everything of the X variety. It has to connect, but it's not that hard to do when it has flying. Motherload Excavator. This is kind of like a crown jewel I kind of found that was nice and neat. On ETB, you get energy equal amount of unique lands a target opponent has. In Commander, it's, I would say, very common for people to run very few basic lands, especially if they're in 3-color decks or more, and those are the more popular lists. You should generate an absurd amount of energy, probably enough to get the bottom paragraph multiple times in a game. You declare it as an attacker, you spend 4 energy, you destroy a non-basic land that player controls, and then it prevents his creatures or her creatures, you know what I mean? That player's creatures can't block you this turn. So, like, of all the big dumb stuff in here, they can't block any of it. So it's meant to be a one-shot to kill people. Probably one of the better payoffs in here, and it's only 18 cents. Behemoth Vault. This is a removal piece on a stick. Removal piece on a stick, and it's a discard outlet. Duplicate removal on a stick. Combustible Gear Hulk. We could have a lot of fun with this. I rarely play Combustible Gear Hulk, but when you do, you better have a list where it makes people sweat a little bit with their decisions. Either they feel your hand with a bunch of cards, or they shoot themselves for a ton of damage because you have an obnoxiously high curve. This is one of those lists where curve doesn't matter because we're just going to be cheating our stuff in to play a bunch of time. I guess that leads us to another like shortcoming of this list is it's a clunky deck. It has a lot of high CMC stuff in it. So like your opening hands, if you're not good at mulliganing, I wouldn't recommend this to you as a player, especially if you're new. There's not a lot of friendliness in terms of like your opening decisions, but if you're well versed and or you want practice, this is a good list for that. You get a free mulligan, so use it. Triniform, just a big dumb idiot, and it has Encore, so I don't know, if we can't get the reanimation thing to happen, then we could just make a bunch of 3/3s and 9/9s on its own. Its death trigger's pretty sick too. Make another 9 power, so you're just trading out one body for 3 bodies for the same thing. Treasure Nabber, this is a pet card of mine. I play this in almost every red deck. Very rarely do I get like a synergistic value out of it. In this list I do, because when people tap their artifacts, I gain them. I could use them as sacrificial fodder to animate cool stuff from our graveyard. Super sweet pick. I think this card's criminally underplayed. I don't see it enough in red decks, but I play it in almost every red deck. Rune Grinder, card advantage piece, and it has mountain cycling, so we consistently get it out of our graveyard. Canoptic Tomb Sentinel, this is a removal piece. If it comes from our graveyard, we get to exile a non-land permanent. Millstone Gargoyle, this is a bit of a stacks piece. We counter the first non-creature spell that a player casts. Most of the spells we're casting anyways, we won't mind getting countered because then that means we have an animation trigger for Daretti here. So we effectively play around it while no one else does. Stuffy Doll, just to be annoying, you choose a player whenever it's dealt damage. We deal that damage to that player. So I'd pick the person that's in the lead. And you determine the lead not by life total, but by permanents in play and cards in hand. The person who plays the most, draws the most, usually wins. So keep that in mind. Unless you're on death's doorstep and you're trying to keep yourself alive, and like it just happens not to be the person in first, then you'll have a much more difficult decision. But yeah, this card kind of requires a little bit of good player evaluation skills. Platinum Angel, prevent our deaths, prevent people from winning. Reckless Handling, I love these gamble tutors because we have equal access to our graveyard as we do our hand. So if we accidentally discard the card we tutor for, it's no big deal. And you just get the biggest, baddest artifact in your deck for whatever situation you're in. 12 cents, criminally underplayed. This was actually one of my favorite spoiler cards from Aftermath. Deserves the love. It's 2 mana. Faithless Looting, it's great because we get to do it twice with its flashback. Board Wipe, Mystic's Mastery. We have a... I don't know why that's in here. I think this kind of snuck in. Yeah, we got a Board Wipe, extra combat, Board Wipe, extra combat, card advantage piece, and a tutor. I think we could lose this. That means we got some money to play with. Let's add an extra combat step because extra combats in this list makes a lot of sense. Did I put extra? No, I won't put that in here. Kind of snuck through my net of deck descriptions. That's kind of cool. I like reviewing a list with all of you and then finding something to replace it with. Most extra combat cards are kind of expensive, so hopefully we could find something with a good deal. Maybe we should throw Full Throttle in here. I think that's a new card from this set that's actually good. It's a little spendy, but we actually have about like $5 to spare, so $101, not bad. And it's a game-ending spell. Getting 3 combats a turn is pretty darn scary. Extra combat spell, removal and removal. Now this is more fun stuff for our synergy package. Hedron Archive, Dreamstone Hedron, they kind of both do the same thing. We could loop them from our graveyards for card advantage. And they sack themselves. Mindstone, I guess all 3 of these fit a card advantage piece and a synergy piece of having something to target. Removal, Coveted Jewel. It's this card introduced Monarchy before Monarchy was a thing, because normally when someone hits you and you have this, you have to pass control of it to the person that hit you. It comes in untapped and they get to draw 3 cards too. But if we layer our stuff correctly, we'll get this in play before we attack with Daretti. We sack it, and then no one has access to this card. I think main phase 1 is the ideal time to play this. If you have multiple combat steps, make sure they're the combat steps that I don't know, give you additional main phases, so you could use the mana in between your extra combats just to get a little extra value. I mean, seeing 3 cards, even if you don't get the extra main phases with extra combats, are still pretty good. Magmatic Galleon, card advantage and or removal and a little bit of ramp. If we deal non-combat damage in excess, we get a treasure. Drawing cards on ETB and Death. It's one of the best Wellsprings in the game. I love cards like these to talk about. I think a lot of these get kind of overlooked, especially if you are playing a commander with a sack outlet, like we are, but it's a 1 mana investment per card you see. So we invest 2, we get a card when it comes in, get a card when it's gone. It's super good. Chalice, there is some flexibility of this, outside of just being a rock that gives you a bunch of mana. If you're in a pinch and you don't want to invest a lot of mana and you have a lot of permanents you don't want to give up, you could just cast this for 0 and have some fodder for your Daretti trigger. Froze ban, creature spells cost 2 more to play. We get around that with animating stuff from our graveyard. This is more of an issue for people who play traditional Magic. Winter Moon, we're mono red. We have a ton of basic lands. We effectively play around it. But it prevents our players from untapping more than 1 non-basic a turn, so it really hoses the multicolored decks. Card advantage lets us play colorless stuff off the top of our library. God Pharaoh's statue stacks our opponents out. I guess there's a sub-theme of stacks in here. We've already seen like 3 different pieces. Do I have that selected? I don't. Why not? Light stacks. About 3 or 4 so far. We got some not card advantage, ramp here. Conjurer's Closet. This is another way where we could get multiple triggers a single turn. We go to end step and we flick our commander, and then we get another trigger. Because getting just 1 Daretti trigger is not exactly enough in my book. Or is it for most people? Mindslaver, this is a game-ending spell in the late game when it's just 1-on-1, because then you steal your opponent's turns and they can't do anything for the rest of the game. So you officially lock them out in that scenario. But it's even still really powerful in a multiplayer format. You steal the turn of the strongest player, completely sabotage them, and then they're just screwed. I rarely see people come back from a Mindslaver play. Even in the mid-game, there's still 4 players in the game. That player is pretty much down and out for the count, and it's a total FU. Breast Tunnel Grinder. This is a really sweet card advantage card because it's a artifact that we can loop, but it lets us pick and choose cards from our hand and restock. On top of, like, we could use our graveyard, so the things we're pitching is still useful to us in our graveyard. So there's almost no reason for you to not just pitch your whole hand and see a fresh set of cards. That's what I intend on doing, unless I got, like, one of these extra combat kind of spells in my hand. Then I'll just pick 1 card less. Possessed Portal, this is another Staxy kind of piece. We prevent people from drawing cards, and then we force people to sack permanents unless they discard a card from their hand. We can play around this better than most, so that's why it's in here, and it's just a really nice fat artifact for us to animate. Gauntlet Power for a big mana swing. Same with Cage Sun. We just mono red, we get the benefits of these kinds of cards. Coupon for artifacts, card advantage. We're going to be looping a bunch of artifacts, so we should get a lot of extra mileage out of this. Should be able to make at least 4 power a turn, maybe even more, depending on if our opponents are also putting artifacts in the graveyard. It's not an uncommon thing. Like, this even triggers on treasures being sacked. So for how popular treasures are, you might even get more mileage per revolution of the table with this. Helm of the Host. This is another way to duplicate and get multiple Daretti triggers. The copy we make will have haste as well. So in a single turn with this in play, we should see 3 triggers. The original attacking, then there's the copy entering, and the copy attacking. So it's one way to get a multiplier with our stuff. And that brings us to the end of list number 1, the Daretti list. Swapping parts. We're going to move on to the next one. Not going to delay anything. Timmy Tim. I call it Timmy Tim because she kind of fits. I built it in a way that fits 2 deck archetypes. We want to be tapping and untapping your stuff, which is the Timless, and then Timmy for the big dumb stuff. We are going to be cheating in a lot of big dumb creatures. So again, kind of suffers from the same issues of Daretti in that our mana curve is going to be a little clunky, and you have to be good about making decisions with mulligans. Around $100 again. I think I kept this under $100, but I built this last Wednesday or Thursday, and prices tend to fluctuate with time, so maybe I could switch this printing and find something cheaper. No? Okay. This is the cheapest version. Weirdly enough, I think the full art's way cooler. I wonder why that is. But the passive trigger on her is whenever a creature attacks one of your opponents, it gains trample. So that means your opponents who attack your other opponents also gain trample. So there's this unique kind of power dynamic in our game where we're playing a little huggy kind of stuff from our commander, but we're also accelerating the game by making people's creatures evasive. And it affects attacking everyone except ourselves. So I am a huge fan of stuff like this. And I haven't played like a Quicksilver, is it Amulet, where you cheat stuff from your hand into play? I haven't played one of those since the beginning of Magic or Commander back in, geez, was it 10 years ago when I started playing Commander? I haven't played one of those in eons, and now I get it from the command zone. I'm pretty excited to do it. We got our ramp package in the 1 mana slot. Green's one of the best at ramping because they have access to these dorks. I'm going to take advantage of them. A lot of people don't like them because they get swept up in board wipes, but I think the risk is worth the reward for the speed that you get. I'm super happy with these, and like after the board wipe, it's like whatever. I think the damage is already done because a lot of our big payoffs will, you know, fix a lot of our problems. Even if we suffer from a board wipe, it's not a big deal. Instill Energy, this is one of our untapping effects. We could only do it once a turn, but getting multiple activations with her is ideal. I would run the other 1-drop energy, or the 1-drop that untaps stuff that's an enchantment, but unfortunately it's not on Magic the Gathering Online, which is where I feature all these lists and play them. It's important to me that if I'm going to be making recommendations to people, I need to put my money where my mouth is, buy the cards myself, and play them myself. I wouldn't make recommendations if I didn't believe in them. And this is just my philosophy and policy with deck building and making content on YouTube is, I don't know. I just don't want anyone to think that I'm not genuine with what I do. So that's why I do it. Got a little sidetracked there. Ulvenwald Tracker. Because we have a lot of untapping effects in this list, we get a little extra mileage with this. We could use that ability on Ulvenwald Tracker instead and fight multiple creatures and get repeatable removal in a single turn. We have a lot of big dumb stuff in this list. So we could probably use the same creature over and over again to clean up the board. These are probably one of the better one-drop ramp spells because they're not creatures. They're harder to get rid of. You enchant a land and they tap for 2 instead of 1. Medallions are back on the menu for being budget friendly. Hasn't been in years. Modern Horizons was a godsend for budget builds. If you have monocolored budget lists, start throwing these in there. Evolutionary Leap. This is so we could constantly have gas in our hand. If someone targets one of our big dumb things, I want to replace it. So they go to target our creature that's going to die anyways. We might as well sack it, get some value, replace it with a new creature for us to cheat in later. That's the idea. Fauna Shaman, we're a creature heavy deck. We're running 50 creatures, so discarding a rink, like if we get one of our mana dorks in the mid to late game when we don't need them anymore, they're perfect fodder for this. It's just a toolbox useful piece. If you never played Fauna Shaman, highly recommend you start doing it. We also can tap and untap it as well to get some extra value. Swap out our not so useful pieces for something good. And then cheat them into play. Some removal. Ramp because we got a bunch of dorks. Oddly enough, I feel like most people who run dorks should just run Priest of Titania anyways because it scales off of all the elves on the battlefield, including your opponents. And I feel like green and mana dorks are so popular, you will get benefit from your opponent's elves pretty consistently with this. Quest for Renewal. I'm kind of sad about this card because of its price point. This is the highest I've ever played it as. I think people are catching on that this card is super good. You don't get the desired effect immediately, but once you have 4 quest counters from just tapping your stuff, you get to untap all your creatures on each player's untap step. So it's like a mini version of Seedborn Muse. Historically, I've been getting away with playing this for $3 and like flying under the radar in terms of popularity. But it seems like it's catching up. People are noticing this card way more often. Then again, I'd say Magic in general has been going up in price lately. It's been harder and harder for me to build budget lists around $100 without making some like significant sacrifices in power. Another tangent I went off on, but I don't know. Folks that are watching, listening later, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I feel like Magic is, I don't know, getting expensive again. We had a nice, like, couple of months where things were really cheap, and seems like we're in the uptrend again. From a builder's perspective, I've been noticing that. Sting, Glinting Dagger. This lets us untap our equipped creature every untap step. It's like a singleton version of Quest of Renewal. Super good. We will most likely just equip our commander with this. Just removal, Elemental Bond. I think our greatest necessity for this deck to function is we need to constantly be drawing cards, because if we are doing the untap thing, we're going to be cheating stuff into play, a lot of it. And I don't want to stop losing gas or run out of gas. These kinds of effects are perfect because a lot of our stuff are really huge. Group's Uprising does the same thing, but gives trampled all of our stuff. Outcast or Trailblazer does the same thing. The reason these 3 are selected is they care about entering. They don't care about casting. I've seen some lists where they're running stuff like Beast Whisperer, which it doesn't make any sense because Beast Whisperer only triggers on cast, and we are not casting our stuff We are not trying to play fair. So if you thought of putting Beast Whisperer in this list, it's probably not a good idea. Spinner Souls, it's like a better version, or slightly worse. It has pluses and minuses of Evolutionary Leap. It's just a death trigger that replaces itself. You don't need to sink mana. That's the plus side. It's on a stick. That's both a negative and a positive. It means it's easy to get rid of, but it's something we can beat on our opponents and block with too. Radagast the Brown. This is a big card advantage piece in our list. I've never personally played him, and there's a reason why he's 65 cents is because he only works in very niche kind of lists. When it or another non-token creature enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library. X is that creature's mana value. And then reveal a creature card that doesn't share a type with a creature you control from among the card types. Put in your hand, put the rest on the bottom. So it gives us card selection. The only caveat is it can't share a type. It's a drawback, but I think having card selection is pretty awesome, and our CMC is insane in this list, and we have all kinds of different creature types. I feel like I should be able to get multiple cards off this pretty consistently. An untapper and a bit of a protection piece. Our untapped stuff has hexproof, our tapped stuff has death touch. Sometimes that matters because we a lot of our big dumb creatures have trample, so that means we only have to dedicate 1 point of lethal damage to the creature, and the rest just goes over and hits the player. If you didn't know the trample death touch interaction, that's how it works. Got Toski for card advantage, Voice of Many for card advantage, Grook's Pack Leader, another one of those ETB triggers to draw cards, but it's on a body. It's a big dumb thing. It's a 10/10. That's all we really care about. Card advantage piece. If a non-human hits a player, we draw a card. There's 3 opponents, so ideally we could hit 3 people, get 3 cards. Card advantage piece, a death touch. That just gets given to all of our stuff. Sign of Calamity, it's a removal piece. We make tokens of this from Myriad, and then if any of the copies hit a player, we have to blow up an artifact or an enchantment. So in an ideal world, we could possibly blow up 3 things per combat. Seedborn, so we can untap our stuff on every untap step. It's even better because it untaps our lands too. Just gives us, this ability to cheat stuff into play isn't free. It costs us a green, so the Seedborn's just strictly better than the other ones we've seen. And if you didn't know, you don't have to follow timing restrictions with this ability. I could put creatures in on other people's turns if I feel like it. I made a very conscious decision about these kinds of cards. Because we're all about cheating stuff into play from our hands, I don't mind that I'm returning stuff from our graveyard to hand. And it's nice it's on a body and a stick. That means I can repeatedly do it. But most of the time, my recursion pieces, I prefer that it goes directly into play. This is probably one of the first times where I didn't mind putting it in my hand. And this card gets to see some playtime that I normally would never play. Kind of cool synergy thoughts if you run out of gas for things to do. This kind of acts like a card advantage piece, except it's not from the top of your library, but from your graveyard. Omnivore, whenever it hits an opponent, it deals that much damage to each opponent as well. Twin Grove lets us put double the power into play, and it's based on the number of forests we have. We're mono green, so we'll have a lot of them. Paleototh, this is kind of a fun card. It's lets us return cards from our graveyard if we have a creature power 5 or greater enter the battlefield, which should happen a lot. This is like an unsung mechanic from Conflux. It's because 5 power was super hard to consistently play back in the day, but now it's not so much. It's why the card's 72 cents, doesn't have a lot of demand, but it fits perfectly in this list. Big Dumb Idiot, it's a 12/8. Whenever a non-token creature enters, we draw. Another ETB trigger. Seal Hellkite, it's a pseudo board wipe kind of a piece. Ancient Ooze, just an incredibly big body. Its power and toughness equal to the CMC of all other creatures in control. So at its minimum, it's a 7/7. If we got extra stuff like a commander, it comes 11 and so on and so forth. Criminally underplayed. Never played it personally. I'm excited to try it myself. Cultivated Colossus. This is budget friendly for $4. Lets us see a bunch of cards, ramp a bunch of lands, and it's incredibly big. Dawnglade Regent. It's a protection piece. Gives us hexproof for the Monarch. Happens on ETB. It's an 8/8. Regal Force for big card advantage piece we draw for each green creature we control. Fearbreaker Behemoth. This is a protection piece. We could choose a creature power 5 or greater and give it indestructible till end of turn. Thorn Mammoth to start shooting stuff off the table. Tree Shaker Chimera kind of acts as a pseudo board wipe. We attack a player and we force all of the defending player's creatures to block it. And it has 8 power, so you should be able to take away the key pieces or a lot of the rinky-dink stuff. And then when it dies, you draw 3. So, what's not to love? A super synergy piece of clearing the board up, drawing a bunch of cards. Archetype Endurance, we rob people of their protection, and we gain protection only exclusively to us. Ghoul Tree is a big dumb idiot. Terrastodon. I don't see this card that much anymore. This used to be a big bad from back in the day when Magic was first came out, but you blow up 3 things, and in exchange of those permanents, they get an elephant. Now, it doesn't hit creatures. That's the only downside, but that's a lot of other permanent types out there that you probably could take away. Most of the time when I see this come down, it hoses someone's lands pretty badly. It's like someone cheats us early, blows up 3 for 3 lands in someone's control, and then that player just sits out and watches the whole game. Usually the application of this. Apex Altasaur clears up the board. On ETB it fights, and then it has an enrage trigger. So every time it takes damage, it fights up to an additional creature. And then the cycle repeats itself until Apex dies or everything else dies. Now, if you want to get the maximum potential of this and your Altasaur is going to die, you go to 9 damage to this and then pick the next biggest thing, because he's dealing 10 damage for each creature, if that makes sense. So say I hit 3 creatures with 3 power. He becomes 9, and then we go to fight the final thing. I will pick the biggest thing possible, so I trade the maximum value. Now, if I hit we'll say it's a 9 power creature first, that means I hit only 1 additional thing before this dies. Some food for thought. If people didn't really know the application of Apex Altasaur, that is how you do it. Hit the small stuff first, save the best thing for last. Put it in simple terms. Tarask, it's a removal piece and it's on a big body. I never personally played it. It's dirt cheap. We don't care about the haste and ward stuff. We're cheating our stuff into play also. Titanos Rex, it's just a big dumb idiot with trample. That's all he really is here. I'm not going to be cycling him away for anything. Another big dumb idiot with trample. Another big dumb idiot, but it's indestructible. Now, our commander gives trample, so like these other creatures with trample are just like, we're not adding a valuable keyword to it, but for stuff like Impervious Great Worm, the Altasaur, Terrastodon, Ghoul Tree, archetype. The list goes on. All of these things that don't have evasion on them will greatly benefit from our commander. So having these vanilla creatures with just big stats is perfect for us. Darksteel Colossus, big dumb idiot. Melver Colossus, big dumb idiot. Primeville Protector, another big dumb idiot. World's Fine Merm, a big dumb idiot that makes more dumb idiots on death. I might have to change the name of this to Big Dumb Idiot. For how often I said it so far. Galta's Big Dumb Idiot. Hierophant Biotitan, Big Dumb Idiot. Nyxborn Behemoth, another Big Dumb Idiot. And probably a Big Dumb Idiot, but with extra value. We could return it back to our hand with its Sacrifice a Land ability. Nice thing is, it goes back to our hand, we can just cheat it back into play with our commander. And that brings us to the end of this list. Super cool, pretty happy with it. Maybe, no, I got War Room in here, we're good. Moving on to our next one. This one is Aristocat. I don't know if you ever saw that Disney movie. It's a classic, back in like the golden age of animation. But if you don't know what Zahur does, he's a cat zombie warrior. He is one of the very few cards I'm going to be featuring about Start Your Engines. I talked about it a little bit in the past, but I'll say it again for all those of you who are watching for the first time. Start Your Engines for Commander is not good. There are exceptions, though. This is one of them. He's a creature from the command zone, and he's dirt cheap. So you could consistently get to max speed. I guess that's the end of the sentence. He consistently gets there. Once you are there, whenever a non-token creature dies, we get to create a tap zombie token. What's unique about him is he also has a sack outlet from the zone. The only drawback is you can only do it once a turn, and you surveil, which is not bad. We could fuel our graveyard up when the situation calls for it. And we have a bunch of creatures that animate stuff. Oh, this printing is expensive. There we go. Now we're at $100 again. This is a budget list. Sorry. Whew. This is another sack outlet for card advantage. What it does is it forces people to also sack things in an attempt to deny loss of life and you drawing a card, but 99% of the time, no one pays into it. Unless they're playing the token strategy, then they will, but like I said, very likely not to happen, and you will draw a bunch of cards off this pretty consistently. It's one of the most oppressive black cards out there, and it's for $3. There's like almost no excuse. If you're in black, this is almost an auto-include. Depends on the shell, but we're an Aristocrats deck. It fits perfectly with us. Butcher Ghoul. Now, Zahur's bottom ability, once we reach max speed, only triggers when a non-token creature dies, so we get extra mileage out of this. Every time it dies, we get a 2/2 zombie. And not only do we get it once, but we get it twice. It means we can sack it again on someone else's turn and surveil again. And I'm running the other 2-drop that's got Persist, Putrid Goblin as well. Kind of does the same thing. Instead of throwing a +1/+1 on it, we're throwing a -1/-1 counter on it. That's the only difference. An Aristocrat piece, we drain every time a creature enters. Ideally, when we start getting online, we will be draining people at least twice a turn, because we could bring back a non-token thing for sacrifice fodder, and then a zombie comes in for the second piece of damage. So every revolution of the table, the goal is that we drain people for 8 per piece of aristocrat we have. And I have a lot of them in here, so we might be able to drain for more. Cruel Celebrant, another aristocrat. Cult Conscript. This is like reassembling Skeleton 2.0. It lets us animate him back if a non-skeleton died, so we could sack a zombie token that we made from earlier to bring this back, and then we always have something dying and draining people consistently. Death Baron. Now, I'm not running a lot of these Lord effects unless they bring something significant to the table. I'm running this one and one other one. This one's great because it gives our stuff Death Touch. It forces people to trade down with our tokens. We're basically trading a resource that costs us nothing for a resource that costs someone something with a Death Touch. And if they let him hit him, it hits him for 3 damage instead of 2. Pretty darn good. Another Aristocrat. Graveworm used for some sweet card advantage. We drain ourselves for a bunch of life, equal to the number of zombies we control. However, we kind of offset that life loss with all the aristocrats we have in here gaining us life. So we kind of have like a pseudo life gain list. I wonder if yeah, I think I could fairly call this a life gain list. Why not? There we go. Increase our net a little bit for interested players. Gravespawn Sovereign. This will enable us to consistently sack something in other people's turns. If we get enough zombies in play, we tap 5 to bring back a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. And it doesn't even have to be ours. We can animate other people's stuff with this thing. It's pretty brutal. It's 15 cents because it only fits in niche places, but it fits really good with us. Card advantage piece for non-tokens dying. A non-token creature, our goal is to have one dying at least on every turn. So we should see a lot of cards from this. Karmic Guide. This is a reanimation piece. In the perfect scenario, we find a second one and we just bring them both back and just do that loop. I'm not running any infinite combos in here because I'm just going to be relying on Zahur for my sack outlet. But if you wanted to, it's not exactly a hard shoehorn to just jam sack outlets in here and then just go infinite death and ETB triggers and drain everyone to death. If you wanted to do that, you could. I didn't want to play 2 combo lists with Aetherdrift, so I purposely conscientiously made that decision. I am going to be talking about a combo list today. It's actually my next list, so we'll get our combo, I don't know, kick in here in a very short minute. Lord of the Accursed. This is the other lord that makes us trade somewhat a free resource with something that people had to invest in. We make our zombies have menace, so that means people are forced to block if they don't want to take the damage. Perfect for, a go wide strategy. Both for mana, Mangara for cards, Marinette Apprentice is another aristocrat, Midnight Reaper for card advantage, Mirkwood Bats is another aristocrat, card advantage with Morbid. This is a recurable piece with Nether Trader. It's one of our best ones. It combos with its almost with itself. I say almost because, if we can't salvage the zombie, it's still good to sack the zombie token on someone else's turn, so we could spend the black and bring this back and get an aristocrat trigger. So if you're in that scenario, a general rule of thumb, try and save your zombies. If you can't, it's okay to throw them away for stuff like this, or the skeletons that we have. Talked about Putrid Goblin, Reassembling Skeleton. He's the OG and the best skeleton in the book. This one doesn't have any stipulations, just 2 mana, bring it back. Rivalark, this is one of our loop pieces. It's a reanimation for power 2 or less. This also lets us get back pretty much all of our aristocrats. So like if we're missing that piece, we can fix it. Shepherd Rot, this is a big game ender. Just make sure your life total is greater than your zombie count, because if it's not, then this is a dead card to you unless you want to kill yourself. I guess if you're in a situation where you can't win the game, you know what I mean, and your death is imminent, I guess in that scenario it's good to end the game in a draw. It's better to end in a draw than in a loss, I suppose. Funny thought, if you ever had interest in that. Sister Hospitaller, this is a reanimation card. Skyclave Apparition, removal. Taste of Karlov, super good. This will double our death triggers. So instead of making one zombie, we make two, I think, right? Yeah, it's a death trigger, so we do double this. And she's also super good because she gives your tokens vigilance and lifelink, so it lets you go balls to the wall in terms of aggro. You can't be tagged back as effectively because you'll still have a wall of blockers and a shit ton of life. It's one of the best aggro kind of commanders that you could possibly play. I feel like people forget that this gives vigilance and lifelink to your tokens. People normally only play this just for the double death trigger, and it's I think criminally sad that people forget. OG Tesa, this will increase your creature output. It's good for, because the zombie tokens we make are black, we make a 1/1 white spirit when it dies, and we can sack 3 white spirits to exile a creature. So it acts as a removal piece, gives us extra fodder. If you feel kind of scummy, you can add that enchantment where you can make an infinite loop, and I forget what it's called, but I think it's All of Darkness or something like that. It's a 1 mana black enchantment, and it makes all creatures black. So basically you're making black white spirits with the bottom ability, and then you always have 3 to sack to the top exile trigger. It's brutal. You can empty the board with that. Like I said, I purposely chose not to do any infinites with this because I already have a combo list on the docket. Undead Augur for card advantage. Wayward Servant for an aristocrat. Welcoming Vampire for card advantage. Only triggers once a turn, but like I said, our goal is to let things die on everybody's turn, so we should see 4 cards a turn with this. Zulaport, another aristocrat. Card advantage, board wipe / single target removal. Card advantage. Pact of the Serpent has some utility to it. I have killed people with this by choosing a player. Say I have 30 zombies in play. I can make someone else lose a 30 life and draw 30 cards. And usually they die before they could even, they'll die to state-based actions before they can even use the cards that they draw anyways. So, super funny finisher if you ever have a big board for it. Or you could just use it as a sweet hand refill. These are just removal pieces, card advantage pieces, not much worth talking about. Eldrazi Monument. We make a lot of fodder. The upkeep trigger is not a big deal. We'll just lose 1 zombie or 1 skeleton or whatever the hell is reusable, and then all of our stuff gets a power buff and flying and indestructibility. I think one of our greater weaknesses is board wipes, but it's not that bad because we have so much reanimation stuff going on. We're pretty resilient to them to begin with, but this adds an extra layer of protection and lethality, I suppose. Skull Clamp. This should minimally net you 4 cards of Revolution. You equip it your turn. You sack the creature it's equipped to, draw 2. Then you equip it to a new creature, and then you go to the next person's turn. You use her to sack that creature, and that nets you another 2 cards. So it's effective for what I want it to do. And it's a lot of cards. Cathar's Crusade is back on the menu. This has not been budget friendly for a long time. $2.44. So if you don't own one of these, highly recommend you buy it. Whenever a creature comes down, we put a counter on each thing on our board. Super strong. Neutering people's commanders. Endless Ranks of Dead. We're making a lot of zombies. This lets us... I want to say double, but it's not double. It's half additional. I don't know what you call that. A half multiplier, right? You go, say I have 10 zombies on my upkeep. If I have this in play in my board, then I get 5 more. And that gathers interest, obviously, because when we go to my next turn and I have 15, then I'll make 7. It's just a snowball-y enchantment. Inspiring Leader. Commanders we have tokens get +2/+2. It's a meaningful Anthem effect. It's cheap for 3 mana. Super good. Tekosha's Welcome does the same thing as Welcoming Vampire. True Conviction. This is another one of our bombs. Gives our creatures double strike and lifelink. Lets us attack with Reckless Abandon, kind of like Teysa. And that brings us to the end of this list. Let's see how we're doing. Good on volume. We are an hour in, and we're on the last list. Go Fish combo. Oh, what did I do? Damn it. I gotta reload the page. Is it based on date? Yeah, let's go. Okay, there we go. Fixed it. This is a bit of a love child list for me. I got a kind of a super creative idea with it. Combo Voltron equipment in its budget and casual. I guess the beauty of this list is there's a bit of a surprise to it. So if you're new to my channel, I like to use every piece of the card. This guy has tap, you add mana where X is his power, which is where the equipment come into play while I'm doing that. Not only do equipment make Redshift's power bigger, but I could use his ability to equip more onto him. This list will play very similar to Agatha from Wilds of Eldraine. It's a little bit different. Agatha only cares about creatures. Redshift cares about everything. So you cast a much wider net with this, and it kind of opens up our card pool to a lot more fun and interesting things. The other thing that's significant is you're adding colored mana to your mana pool, which means we could do a lot of broken combo-y stuff with it, which I'm going to go over. Unlike Agatha, you just got incredible value. You couldn't really go infinite, but you could get an insane amount of value. Like, you could reduce everything to cost minimally 1 mana, but you couldn't make them free. And that's, i.e., where the ceiling ends. Redshift can go beyond that with the infinite combos. There's at least 4 in here that I will show you. We could start with the combos first, or I could finish talking about this card. The Exhaust ability. You put any number of permanents from your hand on the battlefield. So when I was first designing this, I kind of underplayed the value of this card, and then I thought really hard about it. And I'm like, how does this card connect with itself other than, like, we make mana, we could use that mana for the exhaust. Sure, that's nice, but, like, if I could only do it once, I want to be in a way where it is a game-ending effect. And what's also kind of cool about him is if he dies, it resets it. You could exhaust again, which I built this list in a way where if someone kills our commander, that is a huge mistake. I kind of built this to be like a 2-card setup for a repeat use of, what is it called? Not the Great Aurora, but Genesis Wave. I'm going to use this effect like a Genesis Wave. And the way we do that is with things like Rishkar's expertise. I have 5 of these kinds of effects where we draw cards based on power. So the idea is we generate an insane amount of power on our Redshift. We cast one of these, draw a ton of cards, and then we kick into the exhaust ability and just cheat our fat grip of cards back into play. And that's the Genesis Wave effect that I'm trying to describe. And if they kill him and reset him, we get to do it again because I have 6 of those effects where we draw equal to his power. And that's where the Go Fish kind of combo-y aspect comes into play too, because if we hit one of our combo pieces and we have excess mana, we just win on the spot. The combo pieces are mostly our artifacts. We have Sword of Peruns. If we net 4 mana, or if we can tap Redshift for 4 mana with this, we make infinite mana. Another combo piece is Staff of Domination. If we make 6 mana, we make infinite mana with Redshift. So Redshift has to be 6 because it costs 4 to untap Shift and it costs 1 to untap the staff to do it all over again. Umbral Mantle, it costs us 3, so Redshift has to have 4 power to make infinite mana. And the 4th and final piece would be Aggravated Assault, which we need to make 6 mana again, kind of like Staff of Domination. And then we get extra infinite combats, infinite main phases. It's pretty brutal. So in the scenario where you want to be pulling the trigger with the exhaust, we need to be able to make 18 mana in total because we need to pay for the ability and pay for the activation of our, one of those 4 pieces to make infinite mana. That's the magic number. Some is less. Like if we talk about Umbral Mantle and the sword, we only need to make 16 instead of 18. So remember those 2 numbers. If you're desperate, go for it when Redshift's at 14 power. If you're not desperate, wait till you hit 16 and then go for the game windmill slam. If that's really confusing, feel free to ask me questions in the comments below. I'll answer them. I don't mind answering questions. No question is a dumb question. I'm a registered nurse. I treat every question seriously. And that's just my profession, and it extends to my personal life. Okay, enough about that. I'm going to talk about the deck now. Now that we know how the combo works and the fun stuff about Redshift to talk about. Garruk, we're going to be using his -3 almost exclusively. Drawing cards equal to power. Brawl's Invoker, this is our sync for when we make infinite mana, and it wins us the game. Same with Flame Wave Invoker. Mana Dorks, because we're in green. Scavenger Ooze is kind of fun. We can make a ton of mana with Redshift. Just choose green, start plinking off people's graveyards, and make a really big body. Gain a bunch of life. We might need it because we're kind of a Voltron-y kind of a list. That means we're vulnerable to crackbacks, and this kind of fixes that problem. Steel Hellkite for pseudo board wipes. Narcomancer for a sweet coupon. Forgotten Ancient. This is one of our accelerators that's not an equipment. Whenever someone casts something, we put a counter on this, and then on our upkeep, we could move those counters onto Redshift to make them super big. For 29 cents, this card is a steal. Every time I play it, I break people's backs with this thing. They normally just ignore it, and it's always a mistake. I feel like there's so many threatening things in Magic nowadays that this stuff just gets ignored. Like the Mana Gorger Hydras, the Taurian Maulers of Magic, and they're usually, you know, like the stick that you ignore until it's too late. And you have to pay some serious consequences. Dorks. Soul Phyrexia. We should be able to consistently use the mana from Redshift for this. Redshift has Vigilance. So what's nice about this is we always have the tap ability on deck, even after combat. So we get the Voltron-y aspects, and we don't lose any of those aspects. Like, we don't have to choose between attacking or tapping mana. We just do both. That's why Vigilance as a keyword is so perfect for what this commander does. And it lets us go in multiple directions, gives us multiple win conditions. This list has like 6 win conditions in it, and when you get that on budget list, you have a pretty scary list on your hands. It's very flexible and less vulnerable because you're not a one-trick pony. Card advantage. This is a fun equipment. If we are dealing with someone with a scary board, we could go to all of their creatures so they can't attack us for a turn. I've seen this buy an incredible amount of time, and I want to be the one who tries it out for himself. Goblin Engineer. This lets us get our best equipment. Tutors it to our graveyard, but we just swap it out with something else in play. A good investment board wipe. We spend 1 mana to blow something up. Essentially. It's not the best because you can't cast it unless you have all 4 of the legal targets. And if one of the targets goes away, I think the spell fizzles because it doesn't say up to. Has to be somewhat fair when you get this much value from a single card. Reckless Handling. I talked about this earlier today, but it's a tutor. This time around, I'm kind of risking it for the biscuit. I don't have a way to efficiently get stuff out of our graveyard consistently. So if we accidentally pitch it, then we accidentally pitch it. But most of our infinite combos come from artifacts. We have 3 of them, so it's worth the risk. Card advantage pieces. Board wipe, single target removal. Advantage, removal. This is another one of our big draw spells that we don't want to use until we're good and ready to do the Redshift exhaust ability. I wonder if I have... No, I should probably put Reliquary Tower in this just to be safe. Then we can pull the trigger without any kind of consequence. Seems like green's more popular, so we'll cut a mountain. There we go. Traverse Outlands. This is like a big, sweet ramp spell. We're running 27 basics, so we could get a ton with this if we get Redshift big enough. Blasphemous Act, Chandra's Ignition. This is now a somewhat effective one-sided board wipe because it doesn't kill Redshift, but it kills everything else. It also does damage to our opponents, so we could kill our opponents with this spell. And it's now budget friendly. This used to be a $20 card. It's getting reprinted. It's now $3. Super sweet if you're a budget player. Season of Gathering. In here for the card drop aspect, but it has some flexibility that lets us destroy artifacts and enchantments or put Vigilance and Trample on stuff with a counter. Gamble the Tutor. Some removal. This is an instant speed big draw spell. Interaction. Okay, our artifacts. We have this guy, Hero's Blade. Usually I want to play Hero's Blade first, but since Redshift can help us pay for the cost, I don't care that equip costs are expensive. If we could get powerful equipment in play for cheap and they have expensive costs, that's ideal because of Redshift. Like the good example of this is Colossus Hammer. Costs us 1 to play, 8 to equip, but we can effectively equip this than most decks can. And it gives us the insane power buff of +10/+10. These are just efficient equipment, except for this is a combo piece. Most of these just are for stat increases. But protection is ideal, because that means our commander becomes more evasive. It lets us kill people. And it protects our commander at the same time. So it's like a 3-for-1, evasion, protection, and a stat increase. I have this one, and as many swords as I can fit, because they give you protection from 2 colors. I don't have them all. I don't have the red or the green ones in here, because I have too many things in this list that I kind of want to use to target Redshift. And if I can't because I have a sword on it, then I'm going to feel really silly. I guess if you wanted to, because you could easily move stuff around, you can include red and green swords and just move it around to something else. But I'm just playing the ones that are not red and green protection colors, just because I don't want to deal with the hassle. Call me lazy, I guess, but there is no real repercussion other than tying up your mana that I imagine you'd rather use for other things. But it's easy to get around because you make so much of it. Stat increase, stat increase, stat increase, stat increase in lifelink. Let's play with even more reckless abandon. I mean, vigilance already lets us play with recklessness. Now we get to play with abandon because now we have lifelink. Pads our life total real nice. Protection and a stat increase. A card advantage piece and a big stat increase kind of card. It's new. I wanted to try it out. Draconic Destiny is super sweet. Gives Redshift fire breathing for any color, so we could literally feed into itself. We go to combat, it has +1/+1 flying and haste, and then before damage is dealt, we tap Redshift, and we just dump all the mana he makes in from himself into himself, and we could probably pump him up to a lethal attacker. And then if Redshift should die, we get it back. It's a super fun enchantment. I always love lists that can run Draconic Destiny. Super synergistic and powerful in here. For 36 cents, you're getting a steal. Rampant removal. We already talked about that. And the rest are just, you know, basics and fixing. So that's the end of Redshift. I hope you enjoyed me talking about this card. And I feel like you have a very high ceiling with this commander. It's slightly higher than Agatha, which is super fun. You do a lot of broken stuff with this. The floor isn't as good as Agatha's, but I'm okay with that, with the card pool we get in comparison. Whew. That was a long stream. How long have we going now? An hour and 15. So I hope you all enjoyed. I have today off. I'm going to start working on editing some videos. I haven't edited a video in a while. I've been mostly exclusively doing streams this past week because I worked last weekend. And I was on call and I worked a lot. I think I'll be getting a really nice fat paycheck here because when you're on call, I make $70 an hour, and then I worked full days. I think just from the weekend alone, I made like $2,000. So maybe I'll use that to buy magic cards or pay off bills, whatever. Lots of cool stuff. thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night. Bye.